Hey everybody, welcome to the Chasing Freedom podcast with Noah and Jeff.
In this show, we're going to dive deep into flips, wholesales, holding rentals, and creatively structuring deals,
so that we can show you how you can achieve that lifestyle of freedom that you desire.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Chasing Freedom Show with Noah and Jeff. Today, I've got one of my good buddies with me, Michael FitzGerald. He's out of North Carolina, and this guy is doing some awesome things. I'm really excited to have him break down how he's working himself out of his business, how he had a $300,000 week, and what that breaks down to through 4 creatively structured deals. Michael, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm super excited, man. I feel like our guests are going to gain a lot from not only your experience, but the way you think about your business and how you're trying to work on it and not just in it. And I think that's a difficult thing for especially real estate investors to do, but business owners just in general.
Yeah, for sure. And It's taken a while to get there, but that's been a big focus, this year.
I like it, man. Let's jump back to the early days. What did you do before real estate, if there was a before real estate, and then what made you make the jump into real estate? What got you motivated to kind of take that massive risk?
Yeah, for sure, man. I was actually a W-2 employee for about 9 or 10 years, working at a company called soccer.com. So like all my background and passion was in soccer, played soccer in college, played a year out of college. And I just knew that I really wanted to stay in that industry and all that kind of stuff. So I had a cool opportunity for an internship where I traveled the country with this company and moved into a sales role, and really just liked the atmosphere, liked the environment that they created within their company. Almost too much to where I stayed in a W-2 for 10 years, where I always knew that there was something more that I wanted to be doing. So I think it was probably 3 or 4 years into that, I really started getting into real estate, learning more about real estate, and just started buying rentals while I was, at that W-2 job. Because, each year I'd get some type of small-ish sales bonus to where, I could put that as a down payment on a property, and just kind of kept on going that way. And looking at real estate, I always knew I wanted to do real estate. In the back of my mind, I just didn't know how that transition was really going to happen.
Man, that's awesome.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that's really cool. I admire that you were still in that W-2 job and you didn't necessarily rush to get out of that before getting started, but you decided to take action steps that made sense within kind of the confines of your role at that job. I think that's really cool. And I think a lot of people miss that, right? Like they'll be in a W-2 job and they're like, man, I don't want to be here. I want to make the jump. And then you make the jump and you're like, oh, crap, what am I going to do? And you're kind of like, oh, I got to get to work. And then you might make some bad decisions because you're trying to snowball so fast. So I think it's really cool that you set up. You started probably studying one, but then you started purchasing rentals and actually creating a little bit of financial freedom before even taking that jump. So I think that's really key for the listeners to understand, is that if you are at a W-2 job, there's great ways for you to start making passive income so that when you get ready to make that jump, you're not just swimming in deep water right off the bat.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what it was. I was super risk averse, and I knew that this was just like a steady, safe income, where it would, slowly go up every year. But at the same time, it was somewhat flexible. So I could spend time listening to podcasts, reading books. I went to a couple little seminar type things to really just learn a little bit more. And instead of investing money, which I didn't really have at that point at all, I really just kind of had to get resourceful and figure out, hey, how can I buy a property and use that money for a down payment instead of using that money for a 30, 50 grand education into, this space that I know nothing about yet. I'm a big believer in getting that experience versus, just learning and learning and learning. Just jump in and do it.
Yeah, for analysis paralysis, it doesn't do you any good. You didn't buy a property. You can go read 50 books in the next year. That would be an awesome goal, right? You get to the end of the year, you're like, wow, I did it. I read 50 books. Okay, what did you apply that you just learned?
Yeah. And
if the answer is nothing, well, you would have been better. You've probably moved forward as far as educating yourself, but you still didn't take the action to go do something. So I like that, man. Okay, quick question. This is something we normally don't dive into, but was there some convincing of your spouse to go ahead and be able to jump into real estate full time? Because I feel like that's probably something that holds a lot of people back.
Actually, not at all. She's been like a giant believer in me, like regardless of anything that I'm doing, which has been huge. And I want to say that's probably like one of the biggest assets that I've had for being able to like progress and continue down that path. Like I was more hesitant and less believing in myself than she was in me, to where like when it was time for me to like officially quit my job, she's like, just do it. You know, like what's the worst possible thing that's going to happen? We had already learned enough and, you know, made some money. And, you know, I actually got my real estate license and worked part-time as a realtor, helping people buy houses while I was still in that W-2 role, just to save up enough like of a cushion from those commissions to now just, I guess, transition into a more full-time role in real estate. So I did it in like a pretty methodical way, but she was just like, dude, just do it, you know, jump in, you know? So that's been actually very, very giant help, and, you know, making me feel that comfort level to take those leaps.
Well, so there you guys go. If your spouse isn't in support, we're sorry. There's nothing that we can do for you. You just need to marry right like Michael did. No, it's so funny. I got chills like hearing you say that, because my wife for years did the same thing. I hated my life in my corporate job. Like, to me, it was miserable. I just felt like there was so much more out there, and there was so much more I could be doing. And I just felt like I wasn't using my talents. But my wife was, no matter what my fears were, my reservations, she was like, dude, go, do it. Yeah. Like, nothing is holding you back. Go. And I'm like, no, I have to pay the bills. Like, you're in school. Like, there's no who else is going to take care of it? Nobody else is. She's like, what's the worst that's going to happen? We don't make money for a month. Yeah. You can't pay rent. You take it out. You put it on a credit card. Like, you're going to figure it out. And it took me it took me like 6 months where like of just like fighting my internal mental battles with myself to finally be able to quit. So I think that's awesome to hear that your spouse was in full support. She's like, Michael, I believe in you. Go for it. Do it, man.
Yeah, so, for sure. More so than me. I mean, I wasn't going to do it without like some nudging. It takes me a while to make decisions on big things like that. And you really got to have that support system there to make it happen. Yeah,
you definitely do. And I feel like now in our business, like our support system is each other. Like we support each other on making risky decisions, and it's fun to be able to have someone to bounce that off of. But in the beginning,
which is huge. Yeah. I'm super jealous of you guys having business partners, because I'm like in this thing like solo. Yeah. But I have her, which she doesn't know a whole lot about the business, like the ins and outs, the inner workings, but she knows like me, believes in me. So I can bounce stuff off of her, and she's a great sounding board. But at the same time, when it comes to like those like technical nitty gritty decisions, I'm like, I'll mention something to her, and she's like, yeah, sounds cool.
Yeah, I went at it alone for years, bro. I flipped houses for like 4 or 5 years alone, and I just remember constantly feeling like, dang, I'm alone in this. Like, if I mess up, this is all on me. If I'm wrong on this decision, like, maybe somebody else could have looked at this and saw something different than me. So yeah, having either a spouse that can work with you or a partner is definitely beneficial. So it's definitely helped us. Let's get to where you made that jump. What did you make that jump into? So you had your realtor's license, you were starting to sell houses. Did you jump to wholesaling, flipping, or just buy more rentals? Kind of let the listeners know what that looked like for you.
Yeah, that's a good question. So like I mentioned before, man, I'm slow to move into anything. I'm not taking like these big risky jumps or anything like that. So I actually, 2017, I like devoted so much of my time and attention to networking and just figuring out like more about this real estate space before I went full time. And actually, I just reached out to a bunch of people, and I found this developer locally, and I just kind of started having conversations with him and trying to figure out a way that we could work together. And basically, long story short, figured out a way to where he could almost take over my W-2 salary, pay me to come in and like run his acquisitions department. So that was what I did. And I did that for about 1.5 years, and helped him find opportunities for tear down new builds. And within that is when I kind of learned about wholesaling, and like we did a wholesale deal together. And at this point we kind of moved into like figuring out some partnership type opportunities as well. And that was what really opened my eyes, was this deal that we looked at that was, it was a house that was on a double lot, and it was outside of a neighborhood that we were actually building in. So we decided, hey, you know what? We can offer what this house is actually valued at, knowing that there's a bigger play there, being able to split the lot. So we contracted the property at what that house would have been valued at. And we knew that there was like that higher, better use. And then we, marketed it out as, hey, tear down, new build, 2 lots. And each one of those lots is valued at like $80K. So we made like $100K on that deal. Granted, I was the acquisitions guy, I made 10%. So, but that just kind of opened my eyes to like, man, well, there's a lot of other opportunities out here to make money in real estate. So that was like a big light bulb for me at that point.
Yeah, man, there's two things I want to pull out of that I think were absolutely awesome. One is you took the jump, but then you found a strategic partnership that worked for you to go and learn more about the industry and surrounded yourself by somebody who knew more than you. So not only were you learning, but you were also having the opportunity to make money in the meantime. I think that's a huge step. Two, you talked about highest and best use there. And this is one of my favorite things in real estate is if you become an expert in a niche field, then you can find deals that other people miss. Not everyone, but a lot of people when I talk to real estate who don't do real estate, they're like, well, dude, you're competing like Boise's a hot market right now. Jeff, you're competing with everybody. Aren't you scared you're not going to be able to find deals? Everybody wants to flip houses right now. Everybody's looking. But I don't feel that way because I am an expert at like 3 or 4 different areas and I'm niched down. So I know that if I can find something that I can put highest and best use on, then I'm not competing with the masses because they might not be an expert in that field and looking at that. So if you're looking at getting into real estate, use like Michael did. He had a relationship with the developer, which led him to then know about double lots and about splitting lots and about finding extra hidden value that other people miss. Figure out what niche you want to be a part of and then really just exploit that and find deals that other people are missing. I think that is huge. And how awesome was that for you to get a huge win that early on and go, wow, this is real. Like that, I was just an acquisitions guy, but there was a 6-figure spread and this can turn into something that I could do. I think that's incredible.
Yeah, for sure. 100%, man. You get deep into a niche and you're going to be that like trusted local source and people are going to bring you deals and you're going to be able to help show people, how to do certain things that they're like, man, I didn't even know that was an option.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So from the relationship with the developer, what happened next? You did some deals with him. You helped him grow his business. He helped grow you as an investor. What did that transition to?
Yeah, so that was probably about 1.5 years. And at that time, my wife was like pushing really, really hard to move back home to where she grew up. All of her friends were like moving back to that area. They were having kids. We were kind of isolated in this, Durham area where we had some friends, but like it just didn't feel like home. And we wanted something that was going to feel like that long-term place. And like her parents were in Asheville. Asheville's a super cool little town. And we just both knew that was kind of like where we wanted to be long-term. So it was at that point where we just kind of transitioned. I moved there. I offered to kind of continue doing stuff with that developer, remotely. And it just didn't work out at that time, which was kind of a nice little eye-opening thing for me as well. Is like, hey, can I do this on my own? It's a big jump and adjustment, but like, let's figure it out. I feel like it's time to take my training wheels off. It's been long enough. And that's when that was probably like the biggest leap of faith I've ever made. At that point, I had 2 little kids, moved 4 hours away from this market that I had like such like deep knowledge on, and it was just a limiting belief to me to be able to like continue to invest in this area when I'm 4 hours away. But at that point, it was like, hey, let's figure out a way to make it work, and we did. That was like the end of 2018, and that was when I kind of kicked off my wholesaling flipping business and kind of just continued to learn and grow it from there.
I like it, man. Cool. Well, let's do this. Let's jump into this freaking massive powerhouse week that you just had. So for clarification for everybody listening, this is like the little nugget I dropped at the beginning of the episode. Mike, you just had it was over $300,000 in revenue come into the company in 1 week's period of time.
Yeah. I think it was like $365,000 that closed out all in 1 week. So before that, I think our biggest month was probably like, 250-ish. So this all happened in 1 week, which was awesome. And a lot of that, I credit a lot of that. I mean, nothing that we've done recently. It's just been an entire year of building.
Yeah.
This year actually started out super slow. We had a little bit of like transition within our team. We adopted a whole bunch of new systems, a whole new operating system. It was a big focus on hiring this year, identifying the right talent, figuring out what I wanted that team to look like. And in doing that, marketing slowed down super heavy. We didn't have like the acquisition resources to start locking up these deals. So the pipeline from actually the end of last year to up until, probably the summer was pretty limited. We were wanting to shift into like learning how to flip a little bit more. And So there was just a lot of like moving parts that were happening. And we really started getting some traction over the summer. I hired in 2 key roles back in March. I had an acquisition guy that was with me for, a couple years, leave right around that same time. So it was a lot of shifting that was going on. And it probably took about 3 to 6 months before we really got that pipeline built up really strong and just kind of like a lot of momentum back. Because I had a lot of momentum happening last year, but it was, me and a guy, it wasn't like a team.
Yeah.
It wasn't predictable. It wasn't consistent. So then when we finally got that back middle of the year this year, with me being less involved in a lot of these operational seats, that felt like a big win for me because that was a big goal for what this year was going to look like. It's kind of like, long story short, we started getting, more predictable back into the 6-figure months and, higher and higher. And, we have like 35 active transactions going on at any time. So it was, we're typically closing out about 8-ish a month. This week of 4, one of them was by far our biggest straight up assignment. So that helped. We also had one of our flips close out that week. We had our first deal that we took down, did nothing to, and sold to Zillow. So that was cool to kind of see these other options. And then we just had another, just regular straight up assignment. Typically our average assignment's right around 20K. That's what that one was. And yeah, I think we have another, 4 to 6 closing out the rest of this month. So it's going to be a big month for us. And now it's just getting to that point to where, hey, how can we make our best month our standard new month? How do we get to that point? So
yeah, let's hit on 2 things there. So you said your average wholesale is about 20 grand, and you're closing out anywhere from like 6 to 8 of these a month. Let's for the listeners, let's kind of walk through one. How are you sourcing deals to find off-market deals that are leading to a 20K assignment? Because that's a very large margin for wholesaling. That's awesome. And then what does your team look like today that allows you to close out 6 to 8 transactions a month?
Yeah, for sure. So we're doing our biggest channels right now are texting and cold calling. I know that's pretty like common and standard, and that's all shifting, as they have these new compliance things coming out and spam calls and all that kind of stuff, which is difficult. So now we've tiered in some direct mail. But texting and cold calling are just kind of like our tried and true methods that we're regularly getting stuff in from. The team right now, back in March, I hired an acquisition person and an operations manager. From there, we've just kind of continued to get better, train them, and both of those guys have elevated as like strong leaders within the company. Yeah. Over the summer, we brought in basically like an inside salesperson, follow-up specialist to really warm up those leads, qualify them, make sure that they're ready before we pass them off to our closer. And she's to the point now where she is contracting 3 deals a week. Wow. It's set up based on metrics being we look for 15 sales processes per week, 10 offers per week to result in 3 contracts. So basically we break it down daily, or we call it like 3-2-3. So she's getting 3 sales processes per day, 2 offers made per day. It should result in 3 contracts per week. And we've been pretty consistent with that over the past 2 months.
Nice.
And then typically we have about a 20% fallout rate. So that's what we're really kind of like looking at from like historic data from the last, 2 quarters. To understand, okay, now we're ready to bring in another acquisition. So he's going to start next week. That's what we spent the last like couple months doing is interviews, kind of, we go through like a 4-step interview. The last one is like everybody on the team kind of gets together, hangs out, make sure it's a vibe. So they've actually been really liking it because for the past like 3 weeks, twice a week, we're going out for like drinks.
Yeah, they're like, keep hiring, Michael. This is awesome.
I know, man. They're like, yeah, let's make up some phantom roles and just bring people in. But it's been good. So right now the team's operations manager, acquisitions, another acquisition starting next week, a follow-up specialist in the office, a remote follow-up specialist, and we're actually hiring a designated transaction coordinator.
Oh, nice.
To take my operations guy out of transaction coordination, which is probably 80% of what he's doing right now. And move him solely into focusing on the disposition side of the business.
Nice.
And really treating that role almost as like an acquisitions role where he's going to be on a dialer. He's going to be like regularly talking to like all of the best and biggest buyers to figure out what they want to buy, what their buy box is, and how we can, start making bigger spreads.
Yeah.
Let me
awesome.
One of the things that's really interesting to me, I want to go even a step higher up or further back, however you view it. So how many leads do you think the cold callers are talking to that get funneled into the acquisitions guy to then process? So like, what does it look like the step before?
Yeah, and that's a good question, because if I start getting into the nitty-gritty details of that, my brain will explode. I don't know how to do any of that. I literally just want to see those leads when they come into our system.
Yeah.
So we use a cold calling service, so I'm not involved with any of the cold callers. I'm not like listening to their calls. I'm not training them. I'm not doing anything like that. But we are averaging probably anywhere from 15 to 25 leads a day that come in. The majority of those are coming in from text message, and they're not super qualified. So they're just coming in. If somebody says, hey, make me an offer, it's going to come into our CRM. It's going to fall into a dialer, and our follow-up specialists are going to start calling them. Once they get them on the phone is when it goes through that, okay, are you ready to sell? How quickly do you need to sell? And what price point do you want to sell? If they have all of those like urgency, motivation, timeline, and price qualified, they're going to pass it off to that closer, and that closer is going to go through that 30-minute sales process to really see if it makes sense to make an offer on it.
Okay. We got one of our listeners calling in. No, I'm just kidding. Can you imagine? Hey, so as you were saying that though, there's something came to my mind. I'd love to do a follow-up episode to this one with you. I would call it like a mini episode, and just actually go really deep on text messages. I think that'd be like the texting platform, how those get funneled in, the automations you have set up. I think that could be really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that was what one of the listeners just asked for. So,
should we call it the tiny episode?
Yeah, we'll call it like a mini episode. Yeah, the tiny episode. Yeah.
There you go.
That's funny, man. Dude, that's really cool. I like that. I like how much you track everything, because I feel like if you don't track it and measure it, then you can't identify when something's wrong. So like we have some very similar metrics in our business. Like our goal for this quarter, we broke it down by quarter, but for quarter 4, I want the sales team to make at least 50 offers. Our lead flow is much smaller because we're in a market where our data pool is, what do you call that?
It's non-disclosure state, so it's very limited.
Yeah. So, I mean, like we could only pull like 121,000 records in the Treasure Valley. And then from that, like we burned through that in like 3 months. Yeah. So we got to let that data cool off a little bit before we hit it again. But it's just cool to see how much your team has been able to be built out since you and I hung out. Maybe, I don't know, when was that 6 months ago?
Yeah.
And also the hurdles you've overcome, because I remember that the acquisitions manager leaving was a big issue for you because he'd been with you for so long. So it's awesome to see you rocking and rolling, brother.
Are you set up virtually? Like, so you're in Asheville, and then is your primary market still the Durham area?
Yep.
Okay.
So primary market, Raleigh, Durham. We also do Fayetteville, North Carolina, which is about an hour and a half out of Raleigh, Durham. That's like more of like a buy and hold market. Raleigh, Durham, we're doing a lot of like wholesaling, and wholesaling. We'll occasionally do a flip there.
Nice.
Asheville is our local market, but we're still doing everything remote, virtual, over the phone. We're not going out to a property at all, unless it's already been under contract.
Yep.
And typically at that point, we're still going to send either a runner out, an agent out, do photos, do an inspection, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And then we're just kicking off a new market in Charlotte, just because we have kind of the people in office to really already know that sales process, already be able to qualify stuff. It's one of the the bigger markets in North Carolina, and it's a fast growing market. So looked at that as an opportunity to do some more of these like hedge fund, iBuyer type deals, buy them deep at a discount, and then just immediately pass them over to them.
Yeah, that's smart.
Let's do a deal deep dive.
Yep.
You have a really interesting deal that I think even Jeff and I are pretty excited to hear you break down. You did something pretty creative with another person in your market where it sounds like you funded the deal. Do you want to break that one down for us?
Yeah, for sure. So this was a deal actually in the town that I'm in, Weaverville, and the way that I've like looked at Airbnbs and actually being able to have any type of rental properties locally, long-term rentals just don't make sense, but it's a cool touristy type market where people are coming in regularly, and short-term rentals are awesome. And I think it's still far from being saturated. So you can't have them within the city limits, but you can have them just outside of the city limits. Weaverville is the closest town to Asheville. It's about 10, 15 minutes outside of town. and you can do short-term rentals there. So
Nice.
we came across this one property that had just been sitting vacant for like 10, 15 years. I can't remember what lead source it came through on, but I think it was actually text messaging. But the guy just really wanted to sell it. I actually went out to this one. I was excited about it. It's like 5 minutes from my house. Took my daughter out there. We just kind of like wandered all around it. Super sketchy. Just everything was grown up around it. They were like, she found like this just old baby doll covered in dirt, just looked super creepy and haunted. But the house had like a car size hole in the roof. It just looked rough. So I was certainly under the impression it was a tear down. And that's kind of how we underwrote it. And the guy was just like, man, you know what? Like, I've got some painful memories with this house. I just want to sell it. So we're like, I had my acquisitions team underwrite it, offer up, tax value for the land. So contracted it super deep. I think we had it at like 30,000. Had a couple buyers go out to it. There's a couple flippers in town that, do really good work. And one of them, we, signed it over to her. And with the agreement in place that I will be your end buyer. So you already have an end buyer in hand. After she does this big, $150,000, $200,000 renovation to it, because it's in the area where I really want an Airbnb. And I know that she does like high quality renovations. And I just think it'll be a super awesome Airbnb. So actually we ended up switching it over from my business name to my Roth IRA name. Had to put $100 earnest money deposit from the Roth IRA. Yep. Assigned it to her for $175,000. So it was like $145,000 assignment to her. Incredible. She's excited. She knows she's going to make like her margin. Already has me lined up. To be able to buy it in my rental property name. So then we're going to hold that one as an Airbnb, and it'll just be like a cool all around deal, win-win for everyone.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's such a creative deal, man. What I think is so cool about that one too, is that we've hit this cap a couple times in our business where it's like, man, we have so many projects going on that we don't actually need another one.
Yeah.
And so like, this is a cool strategy because you're not taking on the actual flip. Like, you're not going to have to manage that. Yep. You don't have to raise those funds to go do that. You don't have to order all the materials and track and source and any of that. And then you still get the property at the end. She makes money. Yeah. You created a win-win for her. You make money.
You essentially got your down payment that you'll need for the Airbnb on the back end through your wholesale fee. So that's incredible. And I love that you kept it in the Roth IRA. Why don't you break down what the intent behind that was and why that's such a powerful thing for the listeners?
Yeah, for sure. I've been a big believer in Roth IRAs like for a long time. My parents kind of just pushed some that on me like when I was young, and just kind of I've always just been interested in it. And I was like, oh man, how do you grow a Roth IRA? I know you can only put in whatever $5,500, $6,500 a year.
Yeah,
but you can earn in it at an unlimited amount. Mm-hmm. So I got really excited about that, and I've put a big focus on that over the past couple of years. And typically I'll try to do about 3 or 4 deals within the Roth IRA, and they're usually like land deals where it's like, you know what, I can contract this piece of land for 20. I know I got a buyer at 50, or I'll try to take like my biggest spreads that are just quick, simple assignments. So the money comes back in and we just kind of continue to grow it that way. So the thought process there was like, hey, this is a big spread. It's just a little bit of the logistics of the Roth IRA are like a little bit more difficult, like all the paperwork that's involved and all that kind of stuff. So like, I'd rather just do it on the bigger ones and make sure that it all happens smoothly. You also got to make sure you got the right seller, the right buyer that's cool with, like changing up entities and all that kind of stuff on paperwork as you go along. But that all comes back in, and it's tax-free money, and it grows tax-free. We bought another property in it, and we actually we did a seller finance deal to the tenant that was in there. They had been in there for like 10 years.
Nice.
It was a family, and they had a bunch of family members in there. And I'm not about trying to like give somebody a notice that's living in this thing as their home.
Yeah.
They only had like a $2,500 down payment, but like that was another win-win to where, hey, they're going to they now own this home, and they're making their mortgage payments into the Roth IRA. So that thing's continuing to grow.
That's really cool.
A return that I wouldn't be making somewhere else,
Yeah.
So I really love like that whole Roth IRA model and just continuing to grow it over time.
Yeah. There's a lot of, I feel like you did a lot of self-education to be able to get to that point. And that's a point I wanted to bring up to the listeners is like, you didn't just jump into that and not have an understanding of it. So what are some things you did to educate yourself on the Roth IRA, and like what would you recommend other people to do to start preparing for themselves to go do deals like that?
So, I mean, all these different custodians, they have kind of like an educational side and component to them. So I started going to just, nerdy little Roth IRA seminars and stuff like that, meeting other people that had them and that were, using them for different things. And I moved all of my stuff when I transitioned from that W-2 job into like self-directed accounts, because I trusted myself to be able to make those decisions within real estate to produce a higher return than having a, 401k and having, some other person put together these, low, mid, high growth, whatever it was.
Yep.
There's just not as much like control there. So I just, would find other people doing it, discussing it, going to these seminars, asking a bunch of questions. I just recently switched over to a new custodian because like, I think their education has been excellent with it. And, I have someone like at my disposal to hit up and ask different questions about it. And, just kind of make sure that I'm making the right decisions as I continue to go with it.
Yeah. Is that the one Tiffany had recommended at her 2-day event that we had gone to? Is that who you ended up using?
Yes. Specialized IRA. I saw them, they were out at another event I went out to in Cancun a month or so ago. And I just kind of like joined in their highest package to like, hey, give me all these different accounts. We're going to like chop them up into these checkbook IRA stuff, and setting one up for, my wife, my kids, all kinds of really cool stuff that you can do, with any of that self-directed stuff. And it's all tax-free, which, when you're growing and you're creating more income, like anything you can do to offset your taxes is, a huge benefit.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like the amount of effort and energy we spend on making sure we're buying and holding enough properties to offset all of the active income on the flip side is pretty insane. Yeah. Like I would say that this is an area that we could definitely double down on and reduce our taxable income, which would relieve some of the pressure we feel to hold more assets. So
one of our mentors was telling us the other day that you get to a certain level in real estate that no longer can you just be good at real estate and be smart about real estate, but you really have to then like kind of trace it back and become smart at financials and at finances, which like for me, like I'm a college dropout. Like I chased entrepreneurship since the day I was 14. Like it's always what I wanted to do. So when I think about financial literacy, if I'm being honest with myself, I don't think I'm very, very smart in that area. I'm not very studious in that area. I haven't studied it because I just always use the excuse of, well, I don't have to be smart in financials. I just have to be good and smart at real estate until you get to a certain point. And then stuff like this becomes extremely beneficial. So I think this is really cool for the listeners to understand that as you could just be good at real estate. That is fine to get started. Understand your market, understand the area, niche down, focus, learn real estate. You can make a ton of money. But eventually you will have the need to understand taxes and understand write-offs and understand depreciation and cost segregation through buying rentals. Understand how to use things like a Roth IRA. I have a speech impediment, sorry, to reduce your tax liability. And you have to get financially smart. So I think that's really cool to see, like, even in if I'm understanding correctly, your primary focus is wholesaling, but you also have figured out a way, how can I wholesale and then still get some tax benefits and not just have this huge tax bill? I think that's an incredible thing that you're focusing on. I think that's going to be really impactful for you and for any of our listeners that start to implement things like that in their business.
Yeah, for sure. I've just really loved anything and everything having to do with self-directed accounts ever since I kind of learned it, and just moving in that direction. It's really a long-term play. I mean, on that deal, for instance, like, it's a lot of money coming back into the Roth IRA, but I'm paying commissions to two different people directly out of the business account in my pocket. So technically on paper it's a loss for company revenue and all that kind of stuff, but it's a win in like long-term wealth building and wealth creation, which is my, I guess, bigger focus at this point.
That's a really important thing to keep in mind. Like, we've had a lot of conversations about this year. Is like, man, we didn't make as much money as we thought, but then we were completely ignoring how much our net worth had increased. We kept like 4 deals that all had like 6-figure swings on them. Some of them almost double-digit six-figure swings on them. And it was like, I was like, man, I thought we would have made more money this year. And then like we have to remind ourselves, like, well, dude, like it's not always just about how much your bank account increases. Sometimes it's almost more important how much your net worth increases. Because there's a lot of other things you can do on the follow-up or the back end part of that process of increasing your net worth. You can get lines of credit. You become more bankable. So then there's tons of other options that open up on how you can creatively finance deals or bring extra cash into your business. Okay, so one of the things I want to do before we run out of time here, you have done a really good job of building out your team.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing for many people to do. We're in the same boat. This is why this has been such a fun episode for us to hear from somebody else who's literally like, almost even the years line up, which is kind of eerie. Like 2017 is like where I really started to take wholesaling serious. And then like this, how you had to move, I moved markets. It's kind of eerie and weird how similar our stories are.
Yeah.
But can you list off maybe a couple of the top things that you have learned or kept in mind or used to help build your team to where it is now?
Yeah, definitely. For one, it was really just me understanding that in order to build something longer and more sustainable, it wasn't going to be on me to be in these operational seats. So things that I was, very good at before doesn't matter anymore. Like I need to change who I am and who I'm like want to be to now be this leader and start learning more about leadership qualities, what the people that I want to attract within the company would be looking for in a leader within a company. So that they know that they're going somewhere where they're taken care of, where they're going to get great training, where somebody cares about them, where somebody cares about seeing them succeed and elevating to a leader within themselves. So that was a big mindset shift that's kind of happened throughout this past year, was understanding like, yeah, it's great if I can talk to sellers and lock up deals and all that kind of stuff. That's only going to get me so far. How do I take that knowledge and skill set from my brain, put it into somebody else's brain, and do it in a way that like is motivating, it's inspiring, it's exciting for them, it's done in a fun way, so that they get excited about coming to work. They get excited about the opportunities that are there for them, as we continue to grow. So that's been one of them. Another thing, I've really been working with a couple different coaches on some stuff as, I continue to grow, because I don't know any of this stuff. This isn't anything that like is like anything that I've learned from my W-2 job or any other experiences in life. These are things that like I want to like pay other people that are great at them, that have done them many times, and say, hey, teach me what you know. Help me get to where you've been able to get. And one of the biggest things with that is the hiring process. I had no idea what I was doing. So, working with like Tiffany and Josh on their hiring process. I had another coach that was helping me, run assessments on all these people, so I'm not spending time with, people that don't make sense in the long run. We're really just narrowing it down pretty early on to now start interviewing the right people that will fit within these specific roles. So that's been really helpful too.
Man,
Nice.
I love that.
I like the first one you said. It was essentially to make yourself an attractive leader to the people that you want to attract. I think that's so huge, because you're right. It doesn't matter that you're a good wholesaler. Like that when you're starting to build a team, that's not very important that you are good talking to sellers. It's important that you can coach somebody else on how to be good at talking to a seller, and you can create systems and processes for them to have just a small little piece, a small little role in that, and then continue to motivate them. So I think that's awesome. You got to be attractive to the people that you want to attract. That's a big, powerful.
Yeah, I think it's like that's a common theme among a lot of like self-development books, right? Like especially leadership books, is for you to constantly think in terms of other people's interest. And the other people in this situation are the employees that come be a part of the team. And what's in it for them? That's what matters, right? What's in it for them is they get to be around you, because you're an awesome leader. And if that's what they're following, you get a lot more of a commitment from that particular person, employee, teammate, whatever it is that you call them. But the commitment is a lot deeper than someone who's just like, I show up for a paycheck.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool, man.
And
Well,
that's something we harp on in those interviews is like, hey, we're not looking for anybody that wants a job. We're looking for somebody that wants to help build this vision long term.
yeah,
Yep.
absolutely, man.
Crucial.
Well, let's wrap up the end of the show. I mean, we follow the same process that a lot of podcasts follow, but I'd love to hear like maybe a book that you've read or some podcasts that you listen to that you feel like have helped elevate you to where you are.
Yeah, for sure. Books like the Compound Effect, that's almost like goes hand in hand with what I was talking about, like becoming that leader that you think, the people that you're bringing in want to see. That's been huge for me. Another one, shifting like my mindset, was like, just any of the like the T. Harv Eker, any of that stuff. Like Millionaire Next Door was a big one for me early on. Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, all those kind of things have been really impactful for me in shifting mindsets and going in a direction. And then for podcasts, I really got started, probably kind of happened the same time that I really started like running. Was like, hey, every time I'm going to go for a run, I'm going to put on a podcast. And then I actually wanted to start going running just to go listen to podcasts.
That's awesome.
That was probably like 2015. And Bigger Pockets was like huge for me. So like that's all I really like listened to for like a couple years worth of like running, was just Bigger Pockets. And then as I was moving into learning more about like wholesaling and what that was, then it was like, Steve Trang and, Real Estate Disruptors, like listening to all the biggest and the best people that had been there and done it. And now it's like, okay, how can I get closer to all of those people and really just, pull out from them what they're doing, how they've been able to be successful, and implement in my business.
That's awesome, man. Those are Bigger Pockets was huge for us. I know Noah loves the Stephen Trent one. Those are really good, man. How can our listeners get a hold of you if they have any questions, or if they're investing in North Carolina and want to buy some of your deals? What's the easiest way for them to reach out to you?
Probably just Facebook, Instagram. My name on Facebook, MFitty on Instagram. I don't do a whole lot on there, but like I know how important that is, and I really just got to start doing a better job, like doing some content. But I mean, direct message there is like the easiest way.
Cool.
Awesome.
Absolutely, man. We'll throw your what do you call those?
Instagram handle
in the show notes for people to be able to reach out to you. And definitely let's make sure that we follow up and do the little mini episode breaking down the texting campaigns. I think that could be really cool.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, we appreciate you coming on the show, man.
Thanks, brother.
For sure. Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Cool.
Awesome.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Chasing Freedom podcast with Noah and Jeff.
Please subscribe to our YouTube channel in the show notes below. And if you ever want to get a hold of us, feel free to do it via our Instagrams. You can also follow us for our funny content on TikTok.